I want to talk about some of the current events and what might happen shortly afterwards. Well, there was an attack on Natanz nuclear plant, and it destroyed some centrifuges, and uh, it really irked many Iranians and the government officials. But Iran has about two kinds of camps, political camps, and the camp that has been able to come into political power through elections, legitimate elections, uh, and the legitimate elections mean something in Iran, even at any time, because uh, the trend in our politics has been to steer away from monarchies, and this has been going on for more than 100 years, maybe longer. And even in previous dynasty, Qajar dynasty, there were many attempts to limit the power of the king, and then later on they got rid of the Qajaris, which are my ancestors, and then Iranian with the Pahlavis, they decided that we just don't want the monarchies. So we are going to be democratically elected Islamic society no matter what happens, with war or not. So the uh, the government, Mr. Rouhani, he was kind of on the defensive because at that time they were negotiating a way for America to join JCPOA again, and this whole thing, this nuclear, nuclear negotiations and agreement, in my opinion, is a huge fraud, and everybody that's in it is abusing it. Is using it for different things than what it was intended for, or what it could be. When in a company or in a government, every single person, every single official is committing crime. Grand scale fraud and mismanagement. The whole thing usually implodes, falls apart. Well, I had a video in YouTube. It was called "Why Trump Withdrawal Does Not Matter," and it really doesn't, because Iran has had nukes for a long, long time, since 1978, 1980. We had two nukes that were given to us by Kazakhstan when the Soviet Union fell apart. And there is so much evidence, there is nukes everywhere, hidden, buried in all kinds of underground bases. CIA found traces and plants, and the Israelis, they're more than happy to find and what you know I just can't help but laugh, because say you're I was born in Iran. I grew up in Iran. Actually, I have really deep roots with Iran, and my family, uh, a lot of them are or were in military. And you know how when you're born in a place and you were raised in that place, you know some things that the foreigners think about your country is just totally false. It's just isn't true at all. No matter how they dress it up, is in the nuclear agreement. First of all, Iran is built, the country we are located. Imagine you have a house, and your house is located in major freeway, like a 20 lane freeway going one way east and west, another 20 lane freeway is going from north and south. I mean, this is a crossroad. Iran has been invaded and demolished more than 20 times in our recorded history, which is at least like 5,000 years. This been going on forever. And if there are Iranian generals, I don't think there is any such general that does not want nukes or does not want very advanced weapons, does not engage in the most extreme trainings to train military, or doesn't bring anything that you can imagine into military service and production. If there is such a general, I don't think this general would be an Iranian general. It might be it might be like a Yankee general. But if you could think of some of the generals we have, General Hajizadeh, General Soleimani, who was assassinated, or General Salami. They're so I think that the nuclear negotiations are nothing but a fraud. Is nothing but appeasement that Iranian government at some point in the last 10, 20 years didn't want the sanctions, was kind of like appeasing the Westerners to by these phony negotiations to have them lift the sanctions up. But then, as time went on, and United States persisted in its militarism and putting more sanctions and pursuing them in all areas at the behest of Israeli government in financial markets, then Iran didn't have any choices. This is in many areas. In the area of procuring weapons, developing new and producing weapons, in the area of procuring medicine, in the areas for advanced research. They had no choice. They had to rely on internal geniuses or scientists to develop many of these weapons or medicines, whatever they needed. They had to become friends with governments or countries that they do not adhere to Western ideals or Western militarism or criminality. And these are Russia, China, North Korea, to some extent India, and none of these countries are in any shape and form follow the Western models. Or so this whole thing of nuclear negotiations is nothing but fraud. And but the government kept it up, and there is some elements. These are not people who have any kind of say so, real say so in Iranian government. They are usually people who are like secular. They're elected, and there is a business class, people who like ordinary middle class, and they like these kinds of people. My mother voted for Hassan Rouhani, and I don't know what she did with Khatami, which was the predecessor to Rouhani. And these politicians, they don't really like warfare. They want to make peace and get on with it. And in fact, our society is becoming rich. It doesn't show up in some foreign conversation, but Iran has developed many industries. Many of them are not oil related. They are not. Some are like gas and oil, but we have many resources, and also our nuclear or non-nuclear technology has really grown. We produce a lot of gasoline. We produce cars. We produce satellites. We produce rocket launchers. We produce all kinds of weapons. We have a strong agriculture. So this event, the Natanz terrorist act, was like a bomb that went off in the face of the moderate government, and they put them in a huge defensive. They went through pain to try to salvage these negotiations any way they could. While on the other side, the Israelis and the Americans, they're using the negotiations as like a cover for terrorist acts that they want to do. For example, the terrorist act in Natanz happened at the time that United States negotiators were giving all this lip service. Oh my God, we want to join back to JCPOA. Americans are such fucking liars and sacks of shit. They have no plans to honor any kind of agreements with Iran. And they are deeply seduced by fucking Zionist criminals, and are just as bad as any Israeli officer. So it was a double blow up. But the thing is, this sequence of events, these terrorist acts, have been happening like on and off. The attacks on Natanz were like just the next episode in a series of attacks, and then after each attack, there is a retaliation. The Israelis, they hide their losses, and then they go on, they hide for a little bit, and then there is the next attack. And this next attack is also more sophisticated, using robots, to kill our scientists, and then at all times they have access to these corrupt politicians in France and Germany and all these bullshit little mini fascist states in Europe and United States. They come around and they open up these negotiations, always with our moderates. They really trick Iran's diplomatic missions into like endless series of horseshit negotiations that never really get anywhere, and then they do their little dirty things here. I think that many Iranians, they already know how this goes. What I think that is going to happen, this is going to be very harsh retaliations, is that initially there has been 2-3 retaliations that I will just tell you about, but the moderates, they're going to go to elections, and there is so much chatter in Iranian society that everybody is treating our own foreign minister Zarif and Rouhani like they are foreign spies, or they have betrayed us. in a way, I don't think that's the case because Zarif would make a very good foreign minister in dealing with many countries, say African nations, very friendly and moderate, but he's just not the kind of foreign minister that would be suitable to dealing with the United States, with Israel, and some of the Zionist supporters in Europe. We need a very strong military action because every time there is military action against Israel, it's like a ping pong match. Israel is able to get financing and weapons from foreign countries and simply makes them stronger. They rebuild, and there has been like carpet rocket bombings all of Israel by Syria and Hamas. And what we need in dealing with Israel is to hit them very hard, hit 100 major bases Israel has, not in the course of a year or two, but within like days, using the best ballistic missiles to completely demolish their air force. I mean, to completely demolish every building that their air force has, every airplane, every airport, every single road that they can use. It's like when there is a duel and the participant in the duel, they kept shooting at each other's leg and hand. One gets the chance to shoot first, the other guy shoots back, and each one of them is a lousy hit. But this is not the solution. In fact, Israel has been able to come back and assassinate many scientists, many top-ranking officials. They have infiltrated nuclear plants, not only in Iran but in many countries, Arab countries. They have gone to Iraq and they killed this nuclear scientists there. So the piecemeal approach will not work with Israel. What we need is like a nice shot in the head and completely end this Zionist state. I would surmise that this problem with the Zionist criminals will not end until there is a really concerted effort by several players, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, the Russians, to just bomb the living fuck out of them. And it would be very good. The war be very painful and have a lot of casualties. Many Israelis, not Palestinians, Israelis, white Jews that have come in and doing this stuff, many of them to get injured and killed, and many buildings they get completely demolished. But usually, if you want to do something like that, you have to use nukes. But even though we have nukes, we really don't need nukes because there's all these weapons, all these rockets, precision ballistic missiles, and the solution to these guys is something like that, followed by ground invasion from Hezbollah and Hamas to completely like every single area. And the good thing would be to have very high casualty rates in Israel, completely demolish Haifa, completely demolish every building in Haifa, and not even allow them to leave. Because this problem this terrorist organization that calls itself Israel, they are not going to go away. Every attack, military retribution, it only makes them stronger. It makes them better. They learn to defend against more sophisticated weapons. And in fact, I think the reason that Iran's top generals like Hajizadeh, they don't want to hit Israel with these precision uh, ballistic missiles is not because that they won't work. It's because if Israel gets hold of this technology, then we have yet another problem. Or we could hit them and really hurt them, but they won't die, and then they will bring in more advanced anti-aircraft systems. And there are some ballistic missiles that very few anti-aircraft systems, even S-500, might not be able to hit them back. But these weapons, they're extremely advanced. They're very difficult to manufacture. We might not have enough, but well, I think that we are in a window of opportunity to dealing with Israel that we must saturate, bomb the fuck out of them, get them involved in this attrition war where they continuously, their population and their government and the military get killed or equipment gets completely blown apart. And otherwise, it will not work. It's like you're going to, you have a cancer and you're going to chemotherapy, and the doctors, they don't give you enough of the chemicals, enough radioactive stuff to kill the cancer. So the cancer doesn't completely die out. Some areas they remain. And then when you come back home and you eat food and rest, the cancer reformulate itself, and this time it's even more like some viruses, they mutate even with the most effective medication, antiviral agents. The virus, a lot of it dies out, but then they mutate, they come back, and these people might come back in a more mutated, more dangerous form, that it would be even more difficult in the future to get rid of them. So this attack, this retribution must be very, very hard, very destructive, and also must target the Israeli population, the white Jews, Ashkenazis. You should completely wipe them out. Well, in fact, Iranian officials, they use the word wipe out. They don't use the word like this retribution or this and that. But at some time in the past, like 5 years or 10 years in the past, the our weapons had not developed to this level, and it would have been good to retaliate and come back. And this is exactly what happened with the moderate governments. They were like operating, over there, and they sending these people like Zarif around, make handshakes and kiss the butt of the German Zionist supporters. And then it was only by time for other aspects of Iranian military to develop weapons that are high grade enough to do the job. But what about now? What about the time when the Americans and the Israelis are using these negotiations as a cover to do more terrorist acts? I don't know. In fact, in the last attack on Natanz, the person that had brought in the bomb that was hidden in a heavy equipment was one of the inspectors for International Atomic Energy. I mean, look at the level of corruption that even the inspectors for UN they are participating. These people are so shady. I mean, there is like there's a series in TV series in Iran that kind of dramatizes these things. Well, Iranian military has conducted an operation, and they send in a division. They call them green hats. From Iranian military came into Iraqi Kurdistan, and they had known about the Mossad base there. I think they killed 10 of the Mossad agents that had coordinated these attacks, and then 6 more Mossad agents, which is their military or their intelligence, were also severely injured. They were transported to Israel. But hey, this attack was very successful. But then what? I mean, is it going to solve our problem with the Zionists? No, because they'll get stronger. They'll learn from this. They'll put their base places that are even more secure, even more secret. And they make deals with more hidden Kurdish terrorists this time. To go into bases or places that is very inaccessible. We cannot retaliate, or we'll have much harder time retaliating against them next time. We need to put an end to these groups. Like I said, a very hard aerial bombardment of everything that is standing above ground, and followed by ground invasion from many sides, from Golan Heights, from northern Israel. And then our inspiring American friends, they are gonna get involved in their own messes that they have created or they will create for themselves in Ukraine, in areas around China. And these people, they have a destiny. They have been doing this stuff, and they're gonna come an attrition war or World War III. I mean, they don't have any future, and they also do not need negotiations, because they're tricking the diplomatic missions. They're tricking foreign ministers, or these people that are diplomats. Their job is diplomacy. They don't use weapons. There has to be in diplomatic negotiations some kind of mutual understanding, respect, or trust, and so the negotiations mean something. Well, if the negotiations are a cover for terrorist attacks or the stuff that United States CIA wants to do, well, what value do these have? None. I mean, I would take the suggestion of Mr. Khamenei to not negotiate with the West over anything that has to do with military. If there is some negotiations to exchange prisoners, for economic relations, which are almost dead, or even humanitarian. Well, Western countries still have some, not as much as you might think, organizations that do humanitarian things, which are truly humanitarian, like Red Cross, or UN does stuff that impartial, well, yeah, some of these stuff they can go through diplomatic channels, but the rest of these guys, they have a different future, and we shouldn't stop them from their destiny or their futures. Well, thank you very much for being in my YouTube channel, and I promise you that the research and the ideas that you're getting in this channel through me is nothing that you'll ever find in any news agency, any analysis. You can bet on that. This place in the internet is very special. It is really a think tank. Okay. Thank you. Please leave comment, and I'll hear from you.